hypocritical, because what are our oversights of today? What will 100 years from now look back and say, they just didn't understand? As much as I am for the government being out of my business and out of the bedroom and out of a woman's life, as science progresses, we understand that a child in the womb is a child, that a baby in the womb is a baby. And as science continues to develop this story and our better understanding of a fetus, it's just more and more of a conclusion that we need an answer for abortion and women's health. And maybe in 100 years from now, when they have solved that problem, they will look back at us debating this barbaric issue and say they just did not have a clue. Sometimes we look in our past and say, wow, I cannot believe that they let these things happen. What about the things that we're letting happen? And I say all of this not to get sidetracked, but to remind you that there's nothing new under the sun. That death and despair, that suffering and sickness, everything that has been today or is happening today has always been happening since the beginning of time. And he makes an observation. There's always oppression. The man who's writing this is understood to have a vantage point, a perspective to be able to see this in a better way than you can. Have you ever wondered what they talk about after the cameras go away and the mics are cleared and they're sitting in their little offices and they're drinking their $200 water bottles and they're talking about, how they're going to spend $8 trillion? I wonder what those conversations are like. He was in these conversations. If anyone can speak to oppression, it's the guy from this perspective. He had the vantage point to say, yeah, man, what's happening at the top is pretty bad. And what's happening at the bottom is also equally bad. People are treating each other without dignity, without respect. So his conclusion is this. This is in the Bible, y'all. So forgive me. But I can't apologize for this. This is heavy stuff. The conclusion that the preacher comes to is this. So I concluded that the dead are better than the living. The dead are better than the living. It is better to be dead than to be alive. And then it gets worse. But most fortunate of all of those who are not yet born, for they have not seen all the evil that is done under the sun. It's better that we're never even born. This would be a bad time to drop dead, right? To not finish the sermon and everyone leaves here like, I guess God doesn't want us to be alive. This is obviously not the point of the text. That the story goes longer, but we don't have enough time to get to chapter 12 and 11. But as we're listening to him give us a raw description of what's happening under the sun. And again, if you were here these last 2 weeks, this is a life with God factored out. A life looked at with God factored out. There is no God that brings justice. There is no God who is operating sovereignly. Maybe he's here, maybe he's not. I'm not saying I'm an atheist. I'm just saying I don't know how it all works, but I do know how this life works. And it's full of oppression. It's full of depression. It's full of despair. And because we have the vantage point, we have the perspective, 2,000 years after Jesus, we look back and we see that there's a redemption to what this man is saying. That one day, that instead of his observation of oppression, its final conclusion being that we should be dead or never born, we get to interrupt that thought and say, no, wrong. There is justice. The gospel redemption is that there's justice. In Psalms 98:7, speaking to this future justice and this ongoing justice as God operates in the affairs of man. Psalms 98 verse 7, let the seas and everything in it shout his praise. Let the earth and all the living things join in. Let the rivers clap their hands in glee. Let the hills sing out of their songs of joy before the Lord. Why? Why should we sing? Why should we praise? Why should we clap? For he is coming to judge the earth. He will judge the world with justice and the nations with fairness. One day, things will balance out. One day things will be fair again. One day things will make sense again. One day we'll have answers for things that people with really good intentions tried to give you answers for, but they, like you, have no idea why. I don't know why. There's plenty of things that I don't know why. I was struck, just like touched emotionally by this video that I saw. This guy dresses up as like Superman, Spider-Man, and he goes and he visits these children that are dying of incurable diseases. And I think he's trying to push away the darkness. I think it's great. I think that if anyone is inspired to do anything, temporary fixes for this unfixable problem, at least under the sun, I think you should do it. But I look at that, and after studying the Bible as long as I have, it's not very long, but it's a little longer than y'all, I don't have the answer. I don't know why bad things happen. I don't know why there's evil in the world. I don't know why some people, because they just have enough money, can afford like procedures and medicine, and then other people just die. I don't know. I have some answers. I have some inklings. But I don't know. I don't know why cold, introverted, disconnected, isolated kind of people become CEOs, and why, the extroverted, fun-loving, helpful people make $46,000 a year, working at a bank or being a social worker or a mental health therapist. I don't know why. I don't know why there's that disparity. Maybe we can debate as to why it happens, and we can blame it on politics, or we can blame it on culture, or we can blame it on whatever we want. But I don't know why it's there. But I do know this, that after all of our answers are on the table, and we've talked until our PhDs are shining because we know so much, the answer is just that one day, in spite of all the injustice in the world, Jesus, along with all of creation, all of creation will celebrate as Jesus brings justice to the world. And if you don't know anything about the gospel, and I don't want to ruin the end of my message just yet, but I do want to, maybe I'll get ahead of myself and tell you that when Jesus became flesh and dwelt among men, and he invited people to be sons and daughters of God, those who received him, I found that as a blessing, as an opportunity, but he dwelt among us. He lived a perfect life. He died a sufficient death. He rose again miraculously and unbelievably to bring about justice. And he promises that yes, in this world you will have tribulation, but take hold. I have overcome the world. Look, yes, trials and tribulations will come. Yes, suffering, apparently meaningless, apparently without purpose, but take heart. I have overcome the world. That as this preacher makes an observation of oppression and a conclusion that it is better for you to be dead or never born, Jesus pushes back and says, I have come to make all things new. I bring justice where there is injustice. The next observation this man makes is that of ambition. Ambition is, depending on where you are on a particular Sunday morning, a good or a bad word. I've listened to preachers almost back to back, and they're like, ambition is bad. And the next preacher would be like, ambition is great. And that's the problem with words, right? Whoever defines it, right, gets to tell you what to think about it. But ambition is a little vague, a little hard to put your finger on the head of it. But he makes an observation about ambition. Some people might say it is bad because it's self-serving. Some people might say it is good because it means that you're disciplined and that you're a hard worker. And I would say to that if ambition glorifies God, then it's a good thing. And if ambition at one point does not, then it's a bad thing. And you can figure that out as you discern your own life. But he makes an observation on ambition, and he says in verse 4, then I observed that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbor's success. That's a bad ambition. But this too is meaningless, like chasing the wind or hevel, that Hebrew word that we were looking at. Fools fold their idle hands, leading them to ruin. Whether good or bad, he's pulling on a string here and saying ambition it's kind of dumb. Because if I want what you have, and if I think about what you have in its proper context under the sun, it's going to go away. You got $1 million? And if I want those $1 million and I get those $1 million, we both die and nobody got $1 million. Maybe somebody does, but it's not us. So I was envious of something that was drifting from your own hand. And I rushed to go grab it, and it escaped you, and it escaped me. And everyone's in line doing the same thing, trying to catch the same ghost. It's like 1,000 cats chasing the same little laser pointer. And all of them are just tiring themselves out. It's all meaningless. What is his conclusion? Verse 6, and yet better to have one handful with quietness than 2 handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. Okay, what does that mean? It is better to have a little bit with peace than a lot of it, that's not a word, a lot with hard work and chasing the wind. And he's right. He's right. It is better to have a little and be content than to seek for a lot and be filled with all sorts of, strife and frustration. But that is true. But there's a redemptive aspect to this thought that's missing. And it's this, that not are we only called to be ambitious in a God-glorifying way and content in a God-glorifying way, we are supposed to think about generosity. There's a generosity that is displayed from the cross to us. He's like, you could never pay Jesus back for what he gave, but he gives it freely and not begrudgingly. He's not frustrated with you as he gives you the thing that you need the most. Matthew 25, 37 through 40, embodying the life, the behavior of Christ. Verse 37, it says, then these righteous ones will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will say, I tell you the truth, when you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me. The Christian has the opportunity to be ambitious, to be successful, so that they can help people. That if your desire is to make a great business, that you would make the principal desire glorifying God by loving other people and serving other people, by employing them one day, by making a lot of money so that you can help people out who don't have a lot of money, so that you can change lives and push back a bit of that darkness, to work in a generous way, to have a generous spirit, a giving spirit. We've talked a lot about this on our Wednesday meetings and during midweek, and we've talked about it as you guys have asked questions. One person in particular asked about ambition and asked about money and asked about what should be our perspective when it comes to finance and trying to make a lot of money. And we talked about it, but our conclusion was this, is that if our pursuits are gospel-minded, they're generous, they're loving, they're helpful, that is a great thing. Ecclesiastes will say in other passages that it is good for the person who works hard to enjoy the fruits of their labor. And there's nothing wrong with that. But not only can we don't just have to be content. We don't have to just stay content. We can say, I want to be generous. I want to give of what I have and bless other people. Because to be content or to just determine that I'll wait for death or wish I was never born is just not enough. We're ambassadors of Christ. And that's not just for like the people in Awana or people in children's ministry, right? We have a series coming up next year. It's called The Cliches, like Christian cliches. Maybe that's the one we need to talk about. I can never say ambassadors of Christ or ambassadors of the gospel without thinking about, the silly little songs we used to sing. But we are. We are a royal priesthood. We're a light on a hill. We're salt of the world. We get to bring about the power of the gospel in personal relationships, in small conversations, and in altruistic acts, small acts of kindness. I saw a police officer the other day stop traffic and help an old lady cross the street. And I said, that's a great thing. And I know he's kind of like a public servant, so he's getting paid to do that. But I still thought it was great. Because with all the old ladies in the world that are not being taken care of right now, that old lady was being watched out for. And I thought that was great. Can we, with the mind of Christ, be generous? And the last 3 points is his observation of loneliness. Verse 7, I observed yet another example of something meaningless under the sun. This is the case of a man who is all alone without a child or brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. But then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It is all so meaningless and depressing. I used to work at Home Depot. And if you ever want to be sad about where you work, go work there. I remember working like 2 or 3 months overnight and doing inventory and like going up the ladder, down the ladder, bringing down boxes. And that is a meaningless job. If there's a meaningless job, it's working hardware at Home Depot. It's like, hey, can you organize the bolts and screws? Okay, all right. Put on your, headphones and, pretend like that's not your job. But what got me up in the morning was to go and work for my family, right? My wife. I'm just gonna go provide for my wife, right? I'm gonna make sure that we have enough money to go eat, and she likes to go to Disney, so we would go to Disney, and I'd make sure that we could because of the money that I made. And it made it all worthwhile. I didn't like my job sometimes, but I did the best that I could because I thought I got people. Careful, it's gonna explode again. I said, I am not alone. I have someone that I can provide for. Someone that I can love in a way that comes with my hard work, even though it's a lot of hard work and it seems a little just purposeless or meaningless. But here is an observation of someone who goes about that same exact journey, works very hard, amasses a large amount of money, and says, what is all of this for? And the author, as he makes this observation of loneliness, his conclusion is, man, maybe we should have company. His conclusion is, let us have company. And that's not a bad thing. Part of the reason why we have student ministry, part of the reason why we have midweek and the gathering, and why we have Sunday mornings and 2 services, and the times that we come to each other's houses and play dominoes or hang out or go to the movies together, is because company is a great thing. It's a blessing. And I pray that everyone here might feel that they have a group of people that they can be a part of. Look what he says in verse 9. 2 are better than 1, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, two people lying close together can keep each other warm. And the picture there is someone traveling in the desert in that part of the country. You say, man, you're by yourself. And if the thieves, robbers don't get you, the animals do. And if none of that gets you, you die because you're freezing to death. But having someone with you is that extra layer of protection. Company is so important. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. 3 are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. Think about how normal that advice is. Hey man, you feeling lonely? I feel you, man. Look, why don't you go to youth group? You need to connect. You need to get some friends. That makes sense, right? That's good advice. You don't got no friends? get some friends, bro. Do you play Call of Duty? Come play Call of Duty with us. We play it all the time. You can connect there. You don't like to do that? Too bad. You can hang out with someone else, play ball. Come to church. Come on Wednesdays. Come on Sundays. Come to young adults. Like the leadership is constantly telling you, look, Javi's going to announce that we need your money to go to Rock the Universe if you're a senior and above. And you come and hang out, make connections, make friends. That's good advice. That's biblical advice. But it doesn't stop there, because here's the part that doesn't get answered. What if I am the person in the first part? What if I'm alone? What if the people that should have never left me, left me? What if my mom is gone? What if my dad is gone? What if both of my parents are gone? I got raised with my grandparents or my tia, and now they're gone because of circumstances or because of choices. Maybe I'm the one that's left, and because of my choices now, I'm all by myself. What if I'm alone? What do I do? This doesn't help me. I can try, but what if even when I'm with people, I feel alone? What if I take loneliness around with me to every party and gathering and school and job? It doesn't matter. What do I do then? It's not just about good advice. There needs to be a work of redemption. In the Psalms it says that even when your mother and your father forsake you, I will never leave you. And Jesus makes this super clear and embodies this truth. Matthew 28:20. This is at the end of his ministry as he charges his disciples to plant churches and to teach people and preach the gospel. He says this, and be sure of this. In other translations, it's behold, which is, it's like saying, look at me. That's a big deal. My 4-year-old wigs out about whatever way I can get her back. As I tell her, look at me. It's, something broke. She made a mistake. She did something wrong. She lost something. She's freaking out because she can't see, a movie or go somewhere. And I just want to remind her that things are still in control, that her dad is still on her side. I tell her, look at me. Look at me. Look. Give me your eyes. That's what this text is saying. Behold, be sure of this. I am always with you. I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. The redemption to this good advice makes the good advice seem like so small. Because if Jesus, the creator of the universe, can promise you, and says, look, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what you're anticipating. I don't know what kind of suffering that you've been through. But I can tell you this, that if you look to Jesus, if you would behold him, he promises you this. Because of what he did on the cross, he says, I will be with you always. I listened to one preacher talk about in the midst of his doubt, because people that are watching him as he's ascending into heaven are looking and worshiping, but there's some people that are doubting. So you have a mixed crowd there. But this is what he says to everybody. So whoever you are in the crowd, he says, I am with you always. And the question is, what about if I sin? I'm with you always. What if I doubt? I'm with you always. What if I leave? I'm with you always. What if I stop coming to church? I'm with you always. What if everyone turns their back on you? I'm with you always. On my way to the library today to go get some more books for Emma. And I checked out some books on her account that are delinquent now. So I had to resolve that too. So I think that's kind of messed up. But as I was on my way, my daughter says, Bobby, I don't want you to die. She's 4 and she's super smart. So she talks about just things. I mean, we watch anytime you watch a Disney movie, somebody, I don't know why they have to do that. He's just like dying all the time. I don't like that. But anyway, it's too late. She's already seen all of the Disney movies. So she thinks about that a lot. And there's one in particular, it's called Vivo, if you've ever watched it. It's really awesome. If you're Cuban descent, it's super awesome. It's very sad. But anyways, there's a scene in that movie that prompted that conversation earlier, and it's just kind of like in the back of her mind. She says, Papi, I don't want you to die. And I tell her, baby, do you know where Papis go? That's what she calls me. And she says, do you know where daddies go when they die? And we're not talking about like heaven and stuff. And she says, yeah, I do. They go into their hearts, to our hearts. And that's an interesting thing. I mean, little by little, I'm teaching her a little more about, salvation, theology, and all that other stuff. But for right now, I'm going to heaven and I'm going into her heart. And as I'm driving, not crying, trying not to cry, I'm thinking how much I wish I could look at my little girl and say, I'm always going to be with you, no matter what. I'll always be with you. That you'll never be alone. She's like, Papi, I just don't want to be alone. And I just want to look at her and say, you won't be. Because I'll be right there in your heart. And to a degree, because of the love and the relationship that we share, I'll live in her brain, in memories. And those are real things, because those are physical realities, right? Those synapses, those neural connections are real. But I can't promise her that as much as I wish. But my hope is that I can look at my little girl and tell her one day, look, if you look at Jesus, he can tell you, I'll never leave you. He'll always be there. And that's what I want to tell you tonight. I can't promise you a lot of things. And people with this opportunity want to promise you a lot of things. They want to. I can't promise you nothing. But I can tell you this, if you put your faith in Jesus, he tells you, look at me, I'll never leave you. Let's pray. Father, thank you. I hate that there is evil under the sun. I hate there are things that I don't understand. I hate there are things that have happened to these young people. Some of them don't have the strength to even begin to form the sentences to share what happened. Some of them have done things that they regret and lived through things that they cannot get past. There's injustice in the world, injustice in our lives. And the question is, God, what do we do? And there's good advice in Ecclesiastes, and there's better advice throughout the Bible and in the Gospels to think of Christ, to think of what you've done. There's a lot of things that could make us sad, that could bring us down. Loneliness, oppression. God, will we just take a look at your Son? We see him as the champion of our faith, as the giver of new life, as the forgiver of sins, of the washing of the old and bringing in the new. God, that we would see him as everything that we need. God, forgive us of our sins. If you're listening to me tonight and you're saying, I've never asked for forgiveness, I've never trusted in Jesus, I'd invite you to do so tonight. Right where you are, pray. Just simply pray and say, Jesus, would you forgive me and save me? I want to look to you. I want to put my trust in you. I want to believe that taking a look at you, I know that you'll never leave me, that I'll never be alone, that the justice that I seek after in my heart and the injustice that pains me is all resolved at your cross and will be resolved under your care and control, that you will make all things new, that you will wipe away every tear, that you will straighten everything that is broken. Even though we don't understand it, Father, forgive us for Forgive me, God. Forgive us for our frustration and for our anger as we look at these things and maybe question you or question what's going on. God, be with us. Thank you for these students and our time in the Word. And if you prayed that prayer, if you prayed anything at all, I invite you to come see us afterward. Whether it's me or Sarah, I'd love to hear your story, know your name. If you feel inclined and you want to come up here to the first row, it's empty, you can pray. We'll give you a moment to do so. God, thank you for these young people. Be with them and their stories, what is going to happen in their futures. We love you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for listening. I pray that this message was a blessing to you, that everything that we shared tonight, from the time we started worship, the prayer, the passages that we read, the words that I shared with you, I hope that it encourages you, blesses you, makes you think differently about your life, think differently about what's going on in the world, and think about Christ. We're going to finish our series in the book of Ecclesiastes. If you know who Javi is, he'll be teaching in 2 weeks. Next week, if you know who Mike is, Mike Prado will be with us next week, and he'll be teaching some of the passages after chapter 4. He'll have his choosing there, and then Javi will conclude with us at the end of the month. The 30th, what's the 30th? Do anybody know what the 30th is? Well, it ain't Halloween. And for Christians, Halloween doesn't even come. It just shows up in the calendar, you kind of ignore it. Some of you at least. So the 30th, we have something that's called the Fall Festival, okay? And so we're still planning out the details. In fact, this Thursday, your student leaders will be planning all the details. Last year, and I think the year before that, most of our dinner hangout parties are usually some food and hangout, but also some competition. And most of the competition is silly and stupid enough to make everybody excited. So we did puzzles and like speed puzzle and like pie eating contest. What else did we do? Did like an apple toss or a pumpkin toss, a bunch of other dumb things. And it was fun because I make fun of everyone as we do it. So it's my favorite part. But that's the 30th, right? Okay, the 30th, it's called the Fall Festival. Not a Halloween party, but it's close enough. It's at 8 o'clock, and we're going to be meeting in the cafeteria. Okay, so we'll have everything set up there. Be ready to enjoy a time of food and hang out and invite your friends. Everyone is invited always, but particularly to our get-together then, okay? With that being said, tomorrow we have church at 9:30 and 11. Abram is preaching tomorrow. Now, Pastor will be preaching 9:30 and 11. If you are awake at 9:30, you're invited to come, but if not, you're like,